So Sjogren syndrome is a complex disease. It presents differently in people, and nobody knows what causes Sjogren syndrome or how to cure it. So that's a big limitation. There is no treatment. It is difficult to diagnose. And so when you diagnose the disease, actually it's too late, because the patients already have chronic inflammation in the salivary and lacrimal glands, and they only can have, artificial saliva. For instance, people cannot make saliva or tears, and they suffer a lot. If you don't have saliva, you lose a lot of quality of life. Oh yes, so Sjogren syndrome Sjogren syndrome it was called Sjogren syndrome, but now it's called Sjogren's disease. It's an autoimmune condition that affects the exocrine glands in your body, meaning like tear glands, salivary glands. But also in many patients, they have systemic manifestation like chronic fatigue, for instance. So Sjogren syndrome affects 1% of the population. And in the US alone, we have about 4 million people suffering or that have been diagnosed with Sjogren's disease, and it affects mostly women. Like 90% of the patients are women and at the perimenopausal age. Yeah, so maybe there are hormonal changes, but nobody knows really. We lack studies. So more investigation needs to be done to try to figure it out, what causes, whether it's or hormonal imbalance or some other things that we have that nobody knows. So far, what we've done is a mouse model. There is a mouse model for Sjogren's disease, and this is a very useful mouse model. It's called NOD, SHIELD-J. It's a non-obese diabetic mouse. But what it has good for the mice is that we can control. As I mentioned earlier, it's very difficult to diagnose Sjogren's. But in the mice, when they are pre-disease, when they are babies, they are healthy. And as they age, you can track features of the disease. So the mice have an autoimmune exocrinopathy similar to Sjogren's disease. For instance, they don't have saliva and they have inflammation of the salivary glands, and that's what I track. That's where we come, because majority of the patients don't produce saliva, and I concentrate in that area, hyposalivation. So we started using resolvins using salivary cells, and they work beautifully. They help to improve culture conditions in salivary cells. So if it worked in the culture, then we use this mouse, and we injected the mice before the disease onset. We say, well, let's see if we can prevent the disease. So we did. It completely restores saliva secretion. It diminishes lymphocytic infiltration. So that's great. So that was our first study. The second study, we say, okay, we know that Sjogren's is diagnosed later. Let's start treating the mice at a later stage. So we treated these mice with resolvins, with ATRVD1, which is the aspirin trigger form. And the animals recover saliva secretion, but the lymphocytic infiltration is still there. So we say, okay, right now they're producing saliva, but how about these inflammatory cells that are still there? We need to get rid of them, because then they produce more inflammatory cytokines, and then the inflammation will come back, and they will have again, it will not be a long-lasting treatment. So right now we're using small doses of dexamethasone combined with resolvin D1, and it works beautifully in the mice. So we not only get restoration of saliva secretion, but we also can see that lymphocytic infiltration is significantly reduced as compared to untreated mice. So that's the beauty of the treatment. So we just got a grant from NIDCR, and then we have funds to continue, because now we want to do a disease onset, later treatment mechanisms. So there is a lot that we don't know yet. And we also have a humanized mouse model, meaning that the mouse have the human receptor. So we can induce inflammation in the mice and treat them with resolvins, and it's working. So we have humanized, and we also have human cells that I am in an ENT department, so we get constantly fresh tissue from patients. So we can do translational studies, and hopefully in the future can be used by patients. So as I mentioned earlier, right, we are using small doses of dexamethasone. Dexamethasone by itself, it can regulate, diminish inflammatory features in the mice. But the problem with dexamethasone, it has a lot of secondary effects, like skin thinning or obesity, multiple secondary effects that we see in patients. So what we wanted to do is use those benefits from dexamethasone, but aided by ATRVD1. So if we use a combination of ATRVD1 with very small doses of dexamethasone, the combined treatment not only improves saliva secretion, but you get rid of the inflammation. So you have gains, and then you decrease the secondary effects caused by dexamethasone. We need to use the other ones. My initial cell culture studies, in my initial cell culture, we tried different resolvings, and ATRVD1 was the most potent, the most powerful. But I believe there are other cytokines that came out later, like RBD2. And I have been in this conference learning a lot about RBD2, lipoxin A4. That's also important. So combinations, I believe maybe that combinations of resolvins could be also a treatment, and you don't need to even worry about secondary effects, because resolvins, SPMs are part of your body. So hopefully in the future we can make combinations or things like that to help the patients. Oh, the future is excellent. It's very promising. I'm very excited to use resolvins in the rest of my projects. My lab works in many different projects because we also work with hyposalivation due to head and neck cancer. And so when these patients get irradiated in the head and neck, they develop fibrosis. So we have many other projects to restore salivary gland function, and I believe resolvins can be applied to other conditions in the salivary gland. So I think it's very promising.